Welcome to another edition of Dallas Social Toastmasters, our distancing version. I appreciate everybody being here. And before we get started, I'm just going to go over a few, I guess I could call them ground rules in the Zoom setting. If you'd like to call it that, that's fine. But just a few things. If you are not speaking, if you can remain on mute. If you do speak, come off of mute, obviously. When you're done speaking, go back to being muted. If you're doing one of our minor roles of either the ah counter or the posture monitor, and if you're going to use a noise device, then you're welcome to stay open. Just understand that if you do have any background noise, you may want to mute yourself at that point. For our speakers, our timer tonight is Cheryl Slagle, and you can see her in there. So you'll want to make sure that you have her in your visual range, whether it's going to be pinned to the screen, and you can pin her by clicking on those top three dots at the top of her square, and then choose pin, and then that way she will be pinned to your screen during your speaking, and you can keep her on there and note as you go along. But as long as she's on your screen and you can see that, that's what counts. I am going to also show the agenda for the evening. So give me one moment here. You can find our agenda on our website, which is DallasSocialToastmasters.com. And if you look over on the right-hand side there's a member section. There's other places where you can find this, but on the member section, you can see there's something that's listed as current agenda. And if you click on that, it's going to open up our current agenda for the evening, so you can follow along. So I would say pull that up if you can. If you need to print it out and you have a printer handy, go ahead and do that now. Otherwise, keep it handy and you can follow along with us as we go along. And at this point, I want to do one more thing before I move on to our club president. And that would be to provide a little inspiration, hopefully. You might have just seen what the theme is, but I'll leave that to our Toastmaster, and maybe you can figure it out from this inspirational quote. This one comes from Abraham Lincoln, and he's had a few, but this one is interesting. It harkens to his day and kind of the person that he was. His quote is, "If I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe." So think about that and imagine President Abraham Lincoln sharpening his axe, preparing to chop down his tree very effectively. At this point, I will pass, unless Mark, did I forget anything at this point that you recognize?
No, sir, you're good.
Okay. If you do have any issues during the meeting, technical or any other questions, you can come to me via private chat, or if you have my phone number, text me. If you go through the WhatsApp, I'll try to keep track of that as well. Mark Schroeder is my backup. If for some reason I get kicked out, I'm not here, he can be your guy. You can reach out to him through private chat as well. But hopefully everybody will have a smooth meeting tonight and we won't need any of that, but we are here for you. At this point, I want to pass it over to our club president and, by the way, our Toastmaster for the evening. So please help me to welcome Mr. Mark Sims.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. For starters, I want to recognize Nick, who's a visitor tonight. And Nick, you just saw us do this thing, and that's the best we can do for applause, since most everyone is muted most of the time. So that's what that is. And at the end of the meeting, we'll circle back with you, just take a little opportunity to get to know you and find out what as Toastmasters we can do for you. And the theme for tonight is managing time effectively, and to throw some realism in it, I put in parentheses, maybe. If you think about when you were a child and you're in the summer break, you no doubt said at one point, "Mom, I'm bored." Well, it's been a long time since those days because we're never bored anymore. We have a lot to do personally. We have a lot to do professionally. And we definitely need to manage time effectively because time and the conditions we work under can be the enemy. I mean, even if you're on a vacation, your mind might be hearkening back while you're looking at a view of the Grand Canyon, thinking about the emails piling up at work, or thinking of the projects you'll have when you get back. So we need to manage our time well. It's precious. But how do you do that? You can find advice on the internet, which I did. Some of it has some merit. A lot of it is only superficially useful. It doesn't really hold up well under analysis. And myself, I live and die with a to-do list, but it's a fruitless exercise. I have one for both work and home, but depending on my energy level or interruptions, never seem to get done with everything I have planned in a day. And some things I don't want to do, I push to the end of the list. So maybe it makes me feel better. I don't know how good of a job it does in helping to manage my time. So I'll go over some ideas that I found, good and bad. And spoiler alert, I am not going to solve any time management problems tonight, but I probably will have at least a couple of good ideas that you can consider. At this point, what we want to do is introduce our duty holders. And our first duty holder to introduce is our timer, relatively new member, Cheryl Slagle. So Cheryl, would you please tell us about your role as timer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters and welcomed guests, as timer, I will be helping the speakers practice expressing a thought within a specific time. My duty during this meeting is to time prepared speeches, table talks, speeches, and speech evaluations. The green background color will show at 5 minutes for the prepared speeches. The yellow will show at 6 minutes, and the red will show at 7 minutes. For table topics, each speaker is encouraged to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. I will show the green at 1 minute, the yellow at 1 minute 30 seconds, and the red at 2 minutes. For evaluators, you have 2 to 3 minutes. The green is shown at 2 minutes, the yellow at 2 minutes 30 seconds, and the red at 3 minutes. If you speak under or over time by more than 30 seconds, you will be disqualified and will not be eligible for awards. However, for table topics, you must reach at least 1 minute. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Excellent. It's a very good description.
Okay, good.
Our next duty holder is our posture monitor, Lee King. Lee, would you please describe your role?
Yes, this evening as posture monitor, I will be paying attention to your posture as you speak and make notes of particularly good uses of posture or poor uses of posture. Of course, virtually it might be a little bit hard to do some of that, but I will pay attention if you start flipping your hair or anything like that. And I will give a report at the end of the meeting. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Our counter is Rob Giles. Rob, please describe your role.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. As our counter, I will be listening for crutch words, any pauses that aren't appropriate, anything that detracts from your speech or what you're saying, anything that doesn't fit in, then I will be clicking that just to make you aware that you just said or ah, or had a long pause that wasn't intentional or didn't seem to be intentional. I will take notes throughout the meeting. I will not use this clicker during the prepared speeches. And when called upon by the general evaluator toward the end of the meeting, I will give a report. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Rob. Our vote counter is Karen Smith. Karen, please discuss your role.
Good afternoon, Toastmaster. fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. As the vote counter, I will accept votes through the private chat to me and count the votes after the audience votes for the best speaker, the best table topic speaker, the best evaluator, and the best of the big three. The big three are the Toastmaster, the table topics master, and the general evaluator. I will record each person wins in each category. I will not cast a vote myself, except in the case of a tie, in which I will cast a vote to break the tie. However, I will not announce that there was a tie. Again, place your vote by sending me a message in private chat, only to me. At the end of the meeting, I will announce the winners. You may also, and I encourage you to do, send comments to each speaker, evaluator, and table topics participant by sending private chat messages to the person directly. Thank you, and back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Karen. Our grammarian is Marcia Collins. Marcia, please discuss your role.
Thank you. Good evening. Greetings, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. As grammarian, it is my responsibility to pay close attention to all speakers, listening carefully to their language usage. I'll take note of any misuses of the English language, as well as any outstanding words, quotes, sayings, or thoughts. As grammarian, it is also my duty to introduce the word of the day. For today's meeting, the word is nostrum. Nostrum. It is a noun. The definition, a usually questionable remedy or scheme. So the word of today is nostrum. An example of using the word is, my nostrum for being late to work is that I blame my lateness on my dogs. Each speaker is encouraged to use the word of the day during thank you. I'll give the word of the day report and grammatical usage report when called upon during the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Marcia. And Marcia was too kind to say that my thoughts on time management might be a type of a nostrum that I'm trying to peddle. Well, hopefully that'll be legit. And before we go to our speakers, let's expand on that theme. I found some ideas for work time management on quickbook.intuit.com. And a few of the ideas they brought up that I guess you could consider are creating an agenda, auditing your time, dividing goals into A, B, C, D, and E, and an interesting one, seeking a mentor. Now, these are examples of time management goals. I mean, good luck with that. But for example, think about auditing your time. If you do that really thoroughly, you're probably wasting as much time as you are saving. And dividing goals into A, B, C, D, or E. Okay, I can get A or B, but to figure out how to divide goals into 5 different levels of priorities is beyond me. And it's a creative idea to seek a mentor to help with time management, but very likely if you went to that mentor, he or she would say, I'd love to meet with you, but I've got so much going on, I'm just too busy. I need help with time management. So maybe not the most relevant ideals. Now, they did have one very good idea, which if you can do it, makes sense, and that is not to multitask so much. Because even though we all do that, it probably is counterproductive because you're dividing your energy, you're dividing your attention. But we're probably hooked on it because at times if I'm working on a memo or working on a report and I see an email pop up and it's from someone, let's say a supervisor or someone that's helping me on a project, I just can't let it go. I just go straight to it, look at it. It interrupts my time. I know it, but it's an ingrained habit. But that actually is a pretty good idea. Although, again, not always easy to implement, because if you're in the middle of working on something and you get an email from your supervisor saying, hey, do you have a few minutes to visit? It's not necessarily feasible to say, no, heck no, leave me alone. I'm busy right now. So again, use these ideas to the extent you can, but if you can cut back on the multitasking, that seems to be the best recommendation this source had. Now, one totally non-scientific idea I have is to maybe delist. I mean, if, for example, you're going to have a meeting 3 weeks from today at 5 p.m. in the afternoon, something like that, well, you probably won't remember that. So put that on a list or a day planner. But you probably know, if you think of your work tomorrow, you probably have a pretty good idea already, without consulting a list or an agenda, what your biggest priority is. Maybe the task that is on your mind the most, maybe you're dreading it a little. And so some things you don't necessarily need an expansive list for. Sometimes it's just a matter of actually getting past the planning and getting to work that helps. So good luck on taking those ideas into account. At this point, we will head into the prepared speeches part of the evening. Our first speaker is Dagan Newland. His evaluator is Rob Giles. So Rob, would you please introduce Dagan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. I'll pass it back to you for the actual introduction, but I'll give you a rundown of what his project is about. He is working out of the effective coaching path and pathways, and his project is creating effective visual aids. The purpose of this project is for Dagan to practice selecting and using a variety of visual aids during his speech. He is practicing the skills that he needs to use these visual aids effectively. He could choose any type of visual aid, and he may choose a minimum of 1, possibly more than 3. But that's his goal. That's his objective, is to use visual aids effectively. Back to you, Mr. Oh, and his time is 5 to 7 minutes. Madam Timer, make a note of that. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. And Dagan, please help me welcome Dagan Newland, speaking on what you need for growing a beard. What you need for growing a beard, Dagan Newland.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm talking about what you need to help grow a beard. So if any of you guys are interested in growing a beard, I know sometimes a lot of guys don't want to grow a beard because when it starts getting that first phase, it starts getting a little itchiness, but I'm going to talk to you about that and maybe get you past that point. And for you ladies out there, you may have a guy that wants to grow a beard, or you may hear somebody that wants to grow a beard but don't want to because of itchiness. So maybe give some help, pointers as well. But first of all, when you first grow a beard, you want to get some beard products, some basic beard products. For example, we have a beard oil. There we go. So this is one of the basic products you should get when you first start growing a beard, because the beard oil actually mimics your natural oils of your skin. So I know as guys, we do not produce as much what they call sebum oil on our face versus on top of our head. So when the hair starts growing out, it starts pulling that oil out from the skin, and a beard oil will mimic that and keep that from itchiness. So that's what you need to keep away from the itchiness. Now, as your beard gets a little longer, past that little stubble stage, and you actually start to get a little length, you may notice your beard is a little dry. So oil actually helps with that within the hair itself too, but it's mainly for the skin to keep that itchiness away. And you get what we call beard drip. It's kind of dandruff for the beard. But when you get to that point, get a little longer, you want to the hair start getting a little dry. So you want to start thinking about something called beard butter. And beard butter It's mostly shea butter, and they have all different types of butters, but most companies use shea butter, but it's for your hair, and it actually designs to actually keep your beard soft and nice feeling for when you touch it, or your significant other wants to touch your beard. And of course, sometimes during the awkward stage when you're growing your beard, sometimes those hairs like to go this way and that way. And that's where we have what we call beard balm. Beard balm has more wax in it, has beeswax, so it's mostly more beeswax in there. So it actually helps style the beard and keep those what we call flyaways from flying everywhere. So that's what you use beard balm for. And of course, to help keep your beard maintained, you gotta have some good combs. So I suggest Chicago combs. They're one of the best combs out there, but this actually didn't go just for beards, it's head hair, anything like that. Chicago comb is just really great comb. So when you're first starting out, you might want to go to with a smaller comb like this. And as your beard, if you want to grow it out longer like me, you have to start getting to a bigger comb and even a bigger comb. And to get to keep the volume in my beard, you gotta have a bit. Be able to pick your beard out. Then once you get it out, you use this comb right here to go down and kind of shape it all around. And another thing you need to get is what they call a beard brush. Now there's different types of these. They have round ones, kind of oval shaped ones. The bristles on them can be really soft or really hard to medium. I prefer a medium, but once you comb your beard, sometimes you still have a little bit of hair, kind of flyaway, so to speak. And when you use a brush, going down your beard, it actually helps put those hairs together and in place. And especially if you're using a beard balm or a beard butter that has a lot of holes, because beard butter also comes in several different thicknesses. So when it comes to beard care, those are the tools that you need to maintain and grow your beard. So just to recap, your beard oil is, when you first start growing beard, this is one of the products, this is the must-have. Some of these, like the beard butter, beard balms, you don't necessarily need that right away. But if you would like to grow your beard out without that itchiness, go with the beard oil. There's many different companies out there with many different scents. For example, you can get them unscented as well, but this one right here is called Salty Vibes from the Bearded Coast. And they actually smell like a strawberry margarita. And they have also, earthy type scents, musky type scents, fruity type scents. There's all different kinds of scents in the game. I even got one from another company called Lemon Delight. And it smells just like a lemon cake with the lemon icing on it. So when it comes to the products you need to maintain the beard, that's what you need. Beard products like beard oil, beard butter, beard balm, and several different types of combs depending on the length of your beard. A short beard, you can get away with a small comb, but a bigger beard, you need at least a medium-sized comb to some bigger combs, and a beard brush. So I hope you find this information useful, and hopefully that will get you started on the right path if you want to decide to grow your beard. Or you ladies out there know somebody that wants to grow a beard, you can give them some pointers. And also, if you want to know more information about what I talk about and things like that, you can always go see my YouTube channel that I have at BGG Beard Reviews. So thank you very much, and back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you, Dagan. Next speaker is Karen Lee. She's going to be evaluated by John Vessels. So John, would you please discuss Karen's speech?
I will do that. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Karen tonight is giving a speech called Service Dogs. And the purpose of her speech is to present a speech that demonstrates a review of basic methods for research. And she wants to develop a well-organized and well-researched speech. The speech can be humorous, interstructural or anything, but the goal here is to deliver well organized, and well-delivered speech based on research that she has done for the topic. Then it's 5 to 7 minutes. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Please help me welcome Karen Lee speaking on service dogs. Service Dogs by Karen Lee.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests, I'm going to give an informational speech on the topic of service dogs. We have about 500,000 service dogs in the United States, according to usaservicedogs.com. I met a lady 4 years ago in my apartment complex in Arlington who had a service dog. At the time that I met her, she was having a seizure, and the service dog was alerting her to her seizure by barking. She went back into her apartment, and she also had another dog, so I walked that dog and brought the dog back to her apartment, and she was fine. She ended up being fine, so that was good. 3 basic topics that I'll talk about in my speech are the Americans with Disabilities Act, some aspects of training skills that the dogs need to learn to perform for their owner as far as basic training. And then also I'll tell you about a veteran who was able to come into contact with and own a service dog named Tuesday. The first main point is the Americans with Disabilities Act went into effect in 1990. This federal law allowed individuals to take dogs into businesses. Now, the law was updated in 2011, naming dogs also as service dogs. A small part of it, interestingly enough, also said that another service animal could be miniature horses. But for our purposes, we're going to talk about training service dogs. When we talk about service dogs, one important aspect to understand is that the dogs, once they learn their basic training, they perform specific tasks for the individual, such as being a guide dog for the blind or alerting a person to a seizure. The dogs can also let people with mental illness know when, or remind them to take their medicine. The dog named Tuesday was also able to let his owner know, who's a veteran, calm him down if he was having symptoms of PTSD. The dogs are specifically bred and trained for specific services to provide to the individual. The basic training means that they have to learn how to be housebroken. They have to be able to pay attention to the owner, especially in the public. And in situations, they have to be able to get along with lots of different kinds of people. Some of the basic trainings that they have to learn how to do, they've got 5 different skills that they learn. One is the owner trains them with the use of a clicker. They use the clicker, and when the dog performs well, clicker's used and the dog gets a reward. The second thing that the dog has to be able to do is understand their name. The dog needs to learn how to sit. One procedure that they learn is tether training. And tether is a steel cable that's attached to the collar and then also attached to an immobile object. The cable is long enough itself to allow the dog to be able to reposition But the purpose of the tether training is so the dog will be quiet for long periods of time. The last skill and some of the basic training is the dog has to be able to be leash trained. One of the big procedures or tests the dog has to pass is a public access test. There are several skills involved in the public access test, but some of the three basic ones are to be able to get in and out of a car, to behave in a restaurant, and to know what to do if the owner accidentally drops the leash. Once that dog passes that basic training, then they're on to learn the specific tasks to help the individual that they'll be working with. Say, for instance, if it's a seizure alert dog, they would learn to bark to alert the individual to a seizure. The other part of my learning was that I read an excerpt from a book called Until Tuesday. It's written by Luis Montalban. He was the owner of the service dog named Tuesday. He was a veteran. He had symptoms of PTSD. And when he would become anxious, the dog would it's a golden retriever, he'd put his head in Luis's lap to help him. And then both Tuesday and Luis were able to become a strong bond with each other over time. Tuesday trained for a couple of years at a school in New York before he came to live with Luis. In conclusion, the Americans with Disabilities Act allowed individuals to take dogs into the businesses. Basic training is very important in order for the dog to learn how to help individuals. And Tuesday was very instrumental in helping Luis overcome his PTSD symptoms. The service dogs are able to help folks in many individuals to overcome so that they can make a big impact in their lives. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Karen. And that does sound like a great asset to have a service dog that can do all that. At this point, I'd like to get a timer's report. So Cheryl, would you please tell us if our speaker is qualified?
Yes, Mr. Toastmaster. Dagan Newland timed in at 5:56 and Karen Lee at 7:14. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Great. Then both of our speakers qualified. Karen was within the grace period. So please vote for the speaker you think did the best job, either Dagan Newland or Karen Lee, and send that by private chat to our vote counter, Karen Smith. And before we head into table topics, just a few more ideas on time management, more in a personal sense. There were some ideas on timemanagementhelp.com. And again, some of the ideas they brought up aren't necessarily the most practical. This one kind of repeated the idea of a time audit, but this was in the form of a time diary. I mean, seriously, who's going to have the time to put all these entries in a diary to, I guess, analyze that later and see where your faults are time-wise? But what I really got the most out of from this source is the ideas where are the areas of your life where they did not want you to cut back. For example, sleep. You might be tempted to not sleep as much, maybe to get up earlier or stay up later in order to get more things done. But very sensibly, the source recommended you not do that because in the long run, it is counterproductive, health-wise and energy-wise and efficiency-wise. And then the same source also had a good idea where not to cut back And that's on fun stuff or rest time. Because if you leave those type of activities or push those to the end of your list, get everything else done, you'll never get there and you'll be stressed out, maybe for no good reason. Now, a totally non-technical idea I have, and this goes against my own grain, because again, I'm somewhat tied to a list, is to try and delist. Because if you think about it, some priorities in your life will push their way to the front of the line. Like, for example, one day I had a lot of things I was going to do, got to the car and got a warning light on my engine. Okay, well, my day was altered right then. So I went to the car repair place to get that worked on. So all my good plans didn't necessarily work out. Or also, if for whatever dumb reason, I go to the grocery store the exact same day every week. And, if you start to run out of stuff, run low in your pantry, run low in your refrigerator, you're going to figure it out pretty quick. So maybe we can spend less time meticulously planning some things that we're going to do anyhow. But again, what I really liked was the suggestion from the source to make sure that you do some things you want to do. Because think about it, a quick weekend, and they're all quick because there's a lot of things you have going on. Be sure that whatever you enjoy doing, whether you're going to watch a game, read a book, work around the house, something that relaxes you, that you prioritize that enough, take the time to do, and in the long run to preserve your mental happiness. Because in the final analysis, what are we managing this time for? Ultimately, it needs to be for the improvement of our lives. So let's make sure we don't leave out the good stuff in the rush to get everything done. And just think about it, depending on the time you are in your life, whether you're just starting off in the workforce or you're just winding down your career, at some point you will be at an age where it's not practical to work anymore. And maybe you'll revert one more time to saying, I'm bored. So you have that to look forward to. This time we want to head into the table topics portion of the meeting. So please help me welcome Mark Schroeder.
Thank you so much. All right, I will be your leader for table topics. Table topics is the extemporaneous portion of our speaking menu tonight. Let's talk just for a moment about how the game is played. First of all, there is a word of the day that you have to use in order to qualify tonight, and the word of the day has been dropped into the chat window for everybody to remember to see it and remember it. Secondly, the timing goals. Your timing goals are between 1 and 2 minutes. You must speak for 1 minute. So if you don't see green, you're not done. And when you see the red, you still have got 30 seconds to finish up. So must make the green 30 seconds after the red before you're disqualified at 2 minutes. Which, to be clear, red at 2 minutes, 30 seconds after that, you're disqualified. And what I will be doing is just asking questions and calling on somebody at random. They're going to be loosely related to our topic tonight, as I usually do. My first question is going to be, what do you think is more important, or which do you consider to be more important? To be able to manage your time or to be able to manage your energy? This question is going to go to Marshall Collins. Marshall.
Thank you, Mark. Making me think real hard. So what's more important, managing my time or my energy? For me, it would be managing my time. Given the fact of the line of work that I do, it's important for me to have a schedule. I have multiple calendars that I use. As I shared out before, I use different colors and to color code. And the reason why is that having order to my day and the things that I do is important. I'm challenged with that. And my nostrum for that is that the fact that I was born, they had to induce my mother's labor, so I wasn't necessarily born on time. So that's why when I am late, that's my nostrum for saying why I'm late. So I need to work on that. So having the ability to manage my time with calendars, with schedules, starting out with a things to do list for the day and checking them off. Then at the end of the day, when I find that probably there's 2 or 3 things left, I do then reevaluate to see whether or not I will carry it over to the next day. And that's how then I prioritize the next events for the following day. Managing my energy, reserving my energy, no, it's not important to me. It's really my time. It really is time. I need time on my side. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, thank you so much, Marcia. We are currently obviously in a pandemic and have been for many, many months now. And it has affected everybody's time and how much time you have, how much time you have to do certain things. The question that I'm going to ask is, because of the pandemic, have you been spending time, wasting time, or have you instead been serving time? That's the nature of the question. And this is going to go to Karen Smith.
Okay, greetings, Toastmasters class. I would have to say that throughout the pandemic, I feel like that I have been spending time. I've been spending more time getting to know my loved ones in different ways. Since we can't always see each other, I feel like that I've made a better efforts in order to spend time. I've made better efforts also, just educating myself on different things I don't think I would have if we were not in a pandemic. So I feel like I'm doing more of spending time, but at times I feel like I am serving time because now going into the second year of this pandemic, I feel like we're at the point where I'm serving time. So back to you, Toastmaster.
Great, thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
I have a t-shirt that I will not put on the screen because of its complete contents, but what it basically says, this house is a prison. It has other words on it, but it basically says this house is a prison. So I feel like I've been serving time since about April. My next question, we are obviously in Toastmasters, and although this still has timing goals, you don't really have as many options as you do for a prepared speech. On a prepared speech, you have everything at your beck and call and advantage to try to make your timing goals. Whether you decide to do practices of your speech, whether you do word counts because you write everything out. I want to know what tools you use and how you make sure that you're going to meet your timing goals on a speech that is a timed speech. And this question goes to Kim Crandall.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Table Topics Master. Definitely something that is not a nostrum approach that would be considered nostrum as far as being able to conduct a better quality speech. I think for most people, knowing your time limit, but being able to adhere to that time, and I think a lot of that comes with practice. I myself have tried timing myself, But for me, that's not something that I really want to do. I think for me, the best approach has been knowing that there's an opening, closing, and the body, and being able to know that I have my main points, but knowing that I could add or subtract to that as I need to so that I can meet the time. I know I have been short on time, I've been over on time. So I definitely say that that is an acquired skill, but being as part of Toastmasters, that is something that is important because in any situation, there's always going to be some kind of criteria for time. So I think that's important to be aware of that. Mr. Tabletop Master.
Thank you, Kim. For what it's worth, I share some of your suggestions and thank you for those pro tips. I usually will put in right before my closing an extra paragraph or two that if I have time, I will go through them. And if I don't, I know that they have nothing really of major addition to add. So I see where I am when I get to those final paragraphs. And if I'm close on time, I just go right through the conclusion. Otherwise, I go ahead and go through those to take up a little bit more time. So that's one of my tips. Nick, I'm going to ask, as one of our guests tonight, would you be interested in the question or would you prefer to sit out?
Let's do it.
All right. So the question that I'm going to ask you is when you're trying to do things and stay on time, if distractions happen. Distractions are just a part of life as much as any other task that comes along. So how do you deal with distractions?
I think the best way to deal with distractions would be to really, lay out a schedule so that you're not trying to multitask and do multiple things at one time. That way you're able to devote your full attention and be fully present in the moment while you're doing a certain task. I think that would alleviate, a lot of the possibility of distractions creeping in. I think where we see the most distractions, where I see my most distractions would be from a cell phone. So, notifications are something that I've had turned off on my phone for quite a while. And I think that, at least for me, is the biggest source of getting pulled out of the present moment of whatever I'm doing. So I think, taking your phone and putting it somewhere where you're not able to access it or to turn off those notifications, I think is probably the best thing that could alleviate those distractions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nick. And thank you for participating tonight.
Of course.
Let me do one more.
What?
So my next question is going to be, and I'm going to go ahead and do a very quick share for this one. Most of you are familiar with what is called a Movado watch. The thing that's interesting about a Movado watch is, of course, is that it's got one little marker at the 12 and nothing else. Now, I have always joked that if you happen to have one of these, what this tells me about you is that time is not important to you. You are not going to be the kind of person that is going to worry about on New Year's Eve exactly when the stroke of midnight is going to hit. And in fact, off by 5 minutes, off by 10 minutes, you don't care. It doesn't affect your life. So the question is going to be, if you had a watch and it happened to be a Movado, somebody gave you one, would you be stressed out because it doesn't tell you what you need to know and wasn't going to give you the information that you thought you needed? Or are you the kind of person that, yeah, time is not all that important. I can let things slide. It really doesn't matter all that much. And why, of course. And so this is going to go to you, Cheryl. Give me just one moment and let me get a timer going for you. Just 1 second. Oops.
Wait, so what was the question?
The question was,
Is it gonna stress me out?
yeah, if you had like a Movado, regardless of the aesthetic quality of that watch, with the fact that you never really know exactly what time it is.
Yeah.
How much would that bother you and why? And I am good
I can
to
do it,
go.
Mark. I'm ready.
Oh, okay, go for it. Dagan will be your timer. Make sure that you can see Dagan.
If I had that beautiful Movado watch, I don't think that I would care what time it was. First of all, aren't they expensive? I feel like they are. So I don't know if time would be of huge importance to me. Maybe I would have all the time in the world. But I can't tell you how many times I look at my watch and I never really see what time it is. Yeah, I look at it. What time is it? You look at it for different reasons, I guess, just to see if you're on time, what time of the day it is, and if you have to be somewhere or if somebody's late. So I don't think it would bother me not really knowing what time it is. I don't really like keeping up with time. I wish I didn't have to. That's really all I have to say.
Okay,
Back to you, Table Topics Master.
okay, thank you, Cheryl. So I actually have got a Movado, and partially for the aesthetics, I do love the way it looks. It is really tough for me to wear it out on to a nice party on New Year's Eve, though, because there is nothing that bothers me more than being in a place where 7 different people have got 7 different times on their watch as to when exactly you cross midnight. And I just feel like killing every one of them for not knowing. But, you know, they always say that men who have 2 watches never know what time it is. So that's really pretty close to true. But I still love it. And I aspire, let's put it that way, I aspire to not needing to know what time it is. It is one of the things that I really like in Jamaica. In Jamaica, I drop my timepiece for the most part. You look over at the sun and you go, yeah, it's close to 5. That's good enough. And I even get into problems when people ask me what time it is, because you pull up the watch and you go 7:43. You don't say, it's about a quarter till anymore. When it was analog hands, it's just a little bit before 5 or something like that, as opposed to 4:56. So I still try to do that translation when somebody else asks, because that's still kind of the way I try to think about it. All right, that's going to conclude it for Table Topics tonight. At this point, I will ask for both the timers report and for word of the day. Let's start with the timers report. Timer, how did we do on our speaking times tonight?
Everybody was under 2 minutes. Do I tell you the times or?
That's good enough, as long as everyone
Okay.
is qualified.
Everybody qualified.
Okay. Word of the day. How did we do on word of the day? That's going to be our grammarian.
Out of the speakers for the table topics,
Yes, for table
Okay.
topics.
2. Just 2 people.
Who?
People used it. We need to know which 2. Those are the 2 that are qualified.
Sorry, myself and Kim.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry.
All right, so just to make sure, it was only you and Kim. Anybody else use it that got missed?
I think
Hearing
that
nothing, that means that we have 2 people who are qualified for the vote tonight. And that means you have to make a vote for either Marcia or for Kim tonight for best of table topics. Give everybody just a moment to do that. All right, and with that, the next thing for me to do is to send the meeting back to our, I'm assuming we don't want to go to as Toastmaster, you want to go back just straight to evaluate, right, for right now?
I am finished, so we can go to our
General
general.
evaluator. All right, then next up will be our general evaluator, Lee King. Take it away, Lee.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guest. This is the general evaluation portion of the meeting. This is an opportunity where people get to learn what they did well and areas in which they can improve on. The very first thing that I will do is call on our evaluators for this evening. And our first evaluator for this evening will be Rob. who will be evaluating Dagan's speech. So Rob, can you please share your evaluation with us?
Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially you, Dagan. I'm going to go over a few things that I think you did really well with your speech, and a couple of things that I thought you might at least think about as far as perhaps your next speech. And then finally, something that I thought was unique and liked a little bit beyond the original things that I mentioned. So the first thing that I found about your speech that was great was the organization. You had a fantastic start. You immediately went into it, got right into it, told us what it was going to be about. You said that I'm going to tell you about how to help grow your beard. And so I thought that was a great immediate introduction to for the audience and to get them involved in your speech. Your body contained a lot of great information that helped to support what you told us that you were going to tell us. And then finally, you actually recapped, and I think you actually used the word recap. And it was great. You offered up some suggestions or suggested these things for the audience or for people that they know. And I thought that that was a good conclusion to your speech. So you had good organization overall. The next thing that I really want to point out that you did fantastic was really in tune with your goals for the speech, which was using or creating visual aids to use. And you used a lot. You had some great ones. You had beard oil, you had beard butter, you had beard balm, you had combs, specifically Chicago combs, saying, hey, not just for your beard. So a little bit of a plug for Chicago combs there. And then the beard brush. So you did great with that. And you did a fantastic job when showing them. You moved them close up to the camera. I know for myself, a lot of times when we try to present something on Zoom, we may try to hold it up and maybe it's not in the screen. So you did a fantastic job with actually having it right there so we could see it. So I thought you did a great job with the number of props as well as how you presented them. So fantastic job with that. A couple of things that I thought that you could think about as far as maybe doing a little bit differently. And this has to do with, I guess, preparation, because I noticed this, especially because I'm the ah counter. You had ahs and ums and you knows, and you had some restarts as far as some sentences were concerned. And I think perhaps maybe a little bit more practice as far as the actual structure of the speech and the actual points, that might help to actually help it transition along better. Not a big point, but just something for you to think about. And then perhaps also the beginning, although it was direct, you had some time, I think, and you probably could have thrown in maybe an anecdote to start off, or perhaps something that was going to be a question for the audience that they could ponder as you started into your topic. So that's possibly another thing that you could have added that would have enhanced it a little bit. Finally, overall, again, your organization was great. I love the props that you used and the way you used them. And finally, I really loved the fact that you plugged your YouTube channel for beards. So I think possibly you want to add that in the private chat as well, and let everybody click on that if they need to or want to. They can check you out on that YouTube channel. That's great. You did a fantastic job. I appreciate your speech. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Rob. Our next evaluator for this evening is John Vessels, and he'll be evaluating Karen Lee. John, please share your evaluation.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, General Evaluator. Fellow guest and Karen especially, I want to evaluate you tonight on your speech, Service Dogs. Now, the goal of your speech was to do some research on a topic and a subject and present it in described fashion. And I think you did a very good job with that tonight. I think your opening was really good. You opened up with a statistic, and not just a statistic, but then you opened up with a personal story about your neighbor who actually has a service dog and how that service dog reacts for her since she has seizures and stuff. I think you brought in 3 good points. You kind of gave us history about the American with Disabilities Act and how they got started and what their point is for service dogs. You presented us some information on the service dogs and their training and what's required of a service dog. And then you also brought us in another subject that is a more personal thing about the veteran and his dog Tuesday, and about his book and how he copes with PTSD by using a service dog. All those were great points, and you brought up a good, strong ending, and you brought all that information back together, back with a little more statistics about the American Disabilities Act and about Tuesday and his dog in that story. I do have one thing I would like for you to have done. And after you talked about the veteran, then you went back into the individualized training on the dogs, and they have to learn to tether and sit and the clicker, which Rob's been using, and being leash trained and stuff. I would have liked to have seen that pushed into the kind of second point you made when you were talking about the service dogs and their training, and then come back around to the very end with the veteran and Tuesday and the men that wrote the book. That's kind of the one little picky thing I think what might have been a little smoother. But all in all, a great speech. You gave us some good information. Clearly, you researched the information well, and you knew what you were talking about. And I think that all in all, I want a service dog. Is there one for fat people? Back to you, Mr. GE.
Thank you, John. At this time, I will ask for Cheryl to give us a timing report. Did our 2 evaluators qualify on time?
Yes, barely, but yes.
All right. With that, please send your vote of the better of the 2 speakers to our vote counter, who is Karen Smith for this evening. And at this point, I really have 2 options. I can either evaluate the meeting and then call on duty holder roles, or I can call on duty holder roles and then evaluate the meeting as a whole. I think this evening, since I'm already foster monitor, I believe that most of the things I'm going to point out are probably more general to the meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and just do both all at the same time and go from there. First of all, the meeting started close to on time, very well. Things moved very smoothly. We went from one part of the meeting to the next very well. The few things that I would like to point out, I kind of think actually really applies to everyone to some extent. As far as the prepared speakers go, very well. And with the speeches, with regards to Dagan's speech, very well organized, like how you had the props, you used the props well. I would suggest that when you're putting the stuff away, however, perhaps turning off your camera for a moment and doing that, and also when you're vaping, just it could be distracting to other people. So perhaps just turn off your camera when you're doing those things. Aaron, very good speech. One thing that I would point out is that, and nowadays, there are service animals and there are support animals. So when giving that kind of a speech, I think that it would actually be important to define that, because, for example, when you fly on an airplane, true service animals are allowed on the plane, and they have to allow the dog to be right there next to you. Support animals, for example, on the other hand, laws have just now been passing that the airlines don't have to require people to, they don't have to accommodate support animals. So there is actually a difference between service animals and support animals. So if you're giving a speech on service animals, at this point, I think it's important that you find the 2. I think 5 years ago, it wouldn't have mattered, but it does today. The only other suggestion with your speech is I noticed that the way that your camera was angled, it looked like you were looking down on us. And I think that's because of the way that your camera is set up on your computer. So I'm not really sure if standing and giving the speech is really the best. It might be better to try to get the screen parallel. And I say that just in general because I believe I caught one other, well, for example, Nick would be another example. He looks okay, but at times it might appear as if he's looking down on us as opposed to more parallel. So not a big deal, just a preference. It's something that I thought I would point out. It pertains to speakers, but just when you talk about positioning of camera, I think that also fits into the posture monitor. The other thing that I noticed is that from time to time, people turned off their cameras, which is fine. But when you're speaking, it's best practice if you turn your camera on. I did notice a couple of times someone was speaking and their camera was turned off. So just if you turn off your camera, just remember when you speak, go ahead and when you unmute yourself, turn on your camera again. And other than that, I felt like the meeting went very well. We had good, overall, really good posture. And I will now call on our other duty holders, starting with grammarian Marcia.
Thank you. So for this evening, as it relates to everyone's grammatical usage, we did pretty well. I didn't catch any outstanding, obvious, improper usage of the English language. Now, as it relates to some thoughts of some words or sayings used this evening, I would say, Mark Schroeder, I never really thought about that aspect of the Movado watch. I was just so impressed about just the style and the classiness of it. But the fact, would I be bothered because it did not, I never thought about that. Never thought about that. The saying where you stated a man with two watches does not know what time it is. I thought that was a really good one. Dagan, when you were presenting the products, beard butter, beard balm. I just thought that those words were very catchy. Never thought that they would have that such a product for a man's beard, beard butter. And then Chicago combs, never heard of it, never heard of them. And then Karen, I just want to thank you so much, especially being a special educator. The fact that you did not abbreviate, you consistently said American Disabilities Act, and you did not say ADA. And I thought that was quite profound because we get very comfortable with acronyms, and the fact that you said it, each word brought greater impact to the point to which you were making in your speech. So thank you very much. Back to you, General Evaluator.
All right. We will now receive an counters report from Rob.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator. Just going from the start of the meeting and on, I'll probably weave some things in between as well. Just the first person, and I think I just caught myself, I think it was an that slipped out there, was Marcia. You were the first person that I really started to follow as far as the counter is concerned. You had one and one during your description. And then at the end, when you gave your report for your duty as grammarian, that's when kind of the dam broke and you had a handful of ums and uhs. I don't know whether you heard the clicks or not, but I think that you did at some point, but during your report, that's when things kind of went haywire for that. Mark Sims, you had one and it was very low key, not very impressive on a negative side. You used the term "you know," which could or could not be considered a crutch. You did use the word or term "I mean," and you didn't necessarily need to use those. You used those a couple of times. Dagan, during your speech, you used the phrase "you know" a lot. And I didn't click, obviously you were a prepared speaker. You used only one though, one and you had a few times where you restarted your sentence. So you started I, or maybe you know, things like that. So kind of restarts at the beginning of a sentence. Karen Lee, a couple of times during your speech where you had some longer pauses where I felt that maybe you were searching for that next point or that next word, something to think about. Karen Smith, during your table topics, pretty good. Only one and one and I think this was your second time at table topics, so I think you did a fantastic job as far as that was concerned. Kim Crandall, you did have a couple of repeat starts. You said I at the beginning of one sentence, and then you said I have at another sentence further on. Other than that, you did fantastic. No ahs or ums or anything like that. Nick, first time, thank you so much for participating. However, it seems that your biggest crutch is your You did have a couple of you knows that you didn't necessarily need to use, but the I didn't click during your table topics. We generally try to avoid that for guests. So just keep in mind, was one of your crutches there. But we do appreciate you stepping up to the plate. That's courageous.
Thank you.
Cheryl, you had a couple of ums and a couple of so's that you probably didn't need to use the so's. You're using them in conjunction, but more importantly, a couple of the ums. Beyond that, the only other person I heard, and I think he corrected it pretty quickly, was John during his evaluation. Used one and one and I think you heard the clicks and there was none after that. It was perfect. So great job at listening up if that's what you were doing. Otherwise, maybe just naturally it went away. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you very much, Rob. That concludes the evaluation portion of the meeting, except for one thing. At this time, I will ask that you make one final vote for the best of the big three. That would be between our Toastmaster for this evening, Mark Sims, our table topics master, Mark Schroeder, and finally myself, Lee King, as general evaluator. Please note that if you are voting for Mark, you specify Schroeder or Sims. And if you vote for me, then I guess you don't have to clarify. There are not more than one Lee in this club. And with that, I will now go ahead and turn the meeting back over to our president, who happens to be our Toastmaster for this evening, Mark Sims. Mark, take it away.
Thank you, Lee. John Vessels, did you do that? Oh, okay. I was thinking, hey, dude. Okay, what have I ever done to you?
No, it's just the way my hands were set and that whatnot.
Well, that would be a first. You'd see if I was paying attention. For starters, we want to recognize Nick. So Nick, thank you for attending. And if you would like to tell us just a little about yourself, what brings you to us and what Toastmasters can do for you.
Yeah, so I am originally from Philadelphia. I didn't really like the cold weather and the humid summer, so I went to Arizona State, studied finance there, lived in Arizona for about 8 years, and moved to Dallas about 2.5, 3 years ago. I practice wealth management here in Dallas at Merrill Lynch. And the reason that I wanted to get into Toastmasters, I heard about it a few times from a colleague that I used to work with at a different office at Merrill Lynch. He does it with, I don't know what group here in Dallas, but I'm always trying to do things that are, you know, pushing my boundaries, making myself better. And this is one of the things that I feel like I can improve a lot upon. So finally made the leap and, you know, contacted a couple different clubs. So that's what I'm really looking to do, is to make myself better.
Okay. And I think, yeah, fundamentally, that's what brings us all here, because some people are interested, like when I first started, in giving better presentations. Some people enjoy the leadership aspect, but we're all trying to push ourselves towards excellence in some degree. So please do come back, visit. If you make the decision you want to join us, you would be very welcome, and very pleased right now because even during this pandemic time, we have a couple of newer members, Karen Smith and Cheryl Slagle, which is great. And it definitely, well, it helps us because bringing in new folks, new stories, and hopefully we can help you. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay. And I'm looking to see what business we have. If you're an officer and you've not had the opportunity to attend Toastmasters Leadership Institute, please do that. There's still some remaining opportunities. And any member that's not an officer also has the opportunity to attend also. And you can find the remaining times on the District 50 Toastmasters website. And we have a club contest coming up. And I think the club contest, Rob, that's March the 4th. Okay, March the 4th, which is going to be both a table topics and international speech contest. So we are looking forward to that. And we probably need some more volunteers. I have volunteered to be the contest master for that. And we no doubt need other folks to participate. And Rob, is there anything you want to add on that?
As we get closer, I'll shoot out emails to people and probably use the WhatsApp to ask for people to confirm and probably confirm early for that week. Again, as you mentioned, it's March 4th, so that we can get our ballot counters, i.e. vote counters, in place, and our timers. We're going to have 2 timers, or maybe we won't. I have to look at that because with virtual, I think we do it differently. So, but I'll look over a lot of that stuff, and then whoever wins those 2 contests will move on to the area contest, which is on March 20th.
Just for the benefit of our guest and newer members, both the club contest and, well, actually club, area, division, and district, I believe, are all going to be virtual.
That is correct.
So it'll be just like a Zoom. And then also the international speech contest, I believe you have to have completed what level in pathways to qualify?
Yeah, you have to have completed.
You have to be past level 2.
Yeah, or completed level 2. Yeah.
Or completed. Okay, that's what you got to have completed.
If you've been in the old education program, then the 6 speeches qualifies you as well.
Yeah, I don't think anybody here is under 6 speeches. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Rob. And Lee mentioned, the contests are virtual, and our next month in March will be roughly a year of virtual meetings. And Cheryl and Karen and Nick have obviously never been to our actual on-site location, and that is at Azona's Grill and Bar. And that's near the intersection of Greenville Avenue and Mockingbird in Dallas. So hopefully at some time there's enough vaccines and we can start going back there again. Is anyone else aware of any other business?
I would just like to reiterate February 9th, that's this coming Tuesday, for the TLI for our officers who have not been trained. If you're interested in finding out more about the officers training, if you're a paid member, then you're welcome to go as well. And I do want to make one other plug for my member orientation on Saturday at 10 a.m. So please attend if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about Toastmasters, anything from A to Z.
Okay. And Rob, in roughly about 12 hours or less, we'll be on a Zoom call with Mary Gomez, the area director. So it won't be that long before I see you. Does any other member have any business to bring up?
I just got a question.
Yes.
I was wondering about that contest for an international speech contest. If you've already had completed speeches before the in the legacy program? Do you have to
You're eligible.
go
You
complete?
qualify.
Yeah, you would qualify.
Okay, all
You've
right.
been around long enough.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
So maybe a backhanded compliment there, Lee. And if there's no other business, then we can go to or find out who the winners of the competitions are tonight. So Karen, would you please tell us the winners? You're muted, Karen.
Sorry. Mr. Toastmaster, we have for our best speaker, we have Mr. Dagan Newland. For our best table topic speaker, we have Miss Kim Crandall. And for our best evaluator, we have Mr. John Vessels. And the best of the big three is Mr. Mark Sims.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you.
And no other business, we can call this meeting a night. And thank you and have a great weekend.
Right,
Adios.
as
Bye.
coordinator, I am going to be stopping the recording here. Thank you, everyone. Congratulations to all of our winners. Stopping the recording in 3, 2,